We weren't live a second ago. We are now.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody, and this is Lady Rage on Gaming as Usual. And tonight we have two special guests with us. The Edge Brothers on Life is a Video Game. Host, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and then the guest?
Yes. Well, I am Moab, or Mobeady, or Mob. Any of those two variants, but nothing else. This is Gaming as Usual, like you already said. And we are here with the Edge Brothers.
Yeah!
From other mothers. So, yeah. And with us we have...
Dr. Stone.
Coco.
Alright.
And introduce the guest on.
Yeah. So
Should we introduce ourselves, or?
Well, no,
Yeah.
Moab should have introduced you guys.
I did.
Okay.
They're the Edge Bros.
Yeah.
No. Elliot and
Maxwell.
Maxwell.
Sorry about that.
No worries. It's fine.
They usually introduce themselves. Sorry.
No, we should actually. Anyhow. Moab, you want to tell us a little bit about them and then starting with the interview?
Alright. These gentlemen are making, or have, found them on Indiegogo, I believe. It was one of those. They have, I'll just call it a Kickstarter because everyone knows what a Kickstarter is. It took the name. But it's Indiegogo, and you can go there, and I guess they're holding on to...
Okay, go ahead.
In case I move, okay. You can go there, you can... Oh. Sorry, my stream popped up. It scared the crap out of me. Anyway. My Turtle Beaches are loud. Go there. They are making a movie. It's kind of... They expect to make a movie called Life is a Video Game. The movie. I love how you have to add movie in the title just so everyone knows what it is. And it's very interesting. I watched interviews with you. I watched your trailers for the show, or for your Indiegogo and everything else. I read about it, and it's very interesting what you're doing. It's more of a documentary type thing about stuff about how life could be a video game, and you based it off of a lot of things, like My Big Toe. I brought that up earlier. It's a very interesting book. I actually read the first 10 pages before I was utterly confused. I made it farther than most people, I gotta say, but I hear you read the book multiple times.
That's true. Most give up on 9. You made it to 10. Yeah, we've read it like a bunch of times. It's really gone. It started a whole line of research for us both, just bumping into the idea of the simulation hypothesis, which is kind of better known as digital mechanics or digital physics, as well as all the paranormal stuff that he touches on in those books. So that just kind of opened up a door, and we ended up doing all this research that ended up confirming, his work through like mathematicians and physicists and other cosmologists and philosophers were all kind of flirting with the same idea. So that's the thing that probably started. But we were interested in quantum mechanics way before then. But yeah.
Interesting. So you think you're Elliot?
Yeah.
Met the author from My Big Toe, didn't you?
Yeah, I met him on several occasions. I've kept up regular an irregular correspondence with him since 2008, and I reached out to him on his message board, and that was strangely enough, truly strangely enough, I reached out on him on August 2nd, 2008, and the fundraiser for our film, which is about him, ends August 2nd, 2013, which was the most bizarre coincidence. But yeah, I reached out to him, met him a couple of times, email correspondence and all that kind of stuff, and he's always been an incredible sort of advisor. And actually, I recommend everyone reach out to him. He's really open. He's kind of made an open challenge to science, And so he kind of takes on comers. He does most of his interaction on his YouTube page right now, just through the comments and everything. But his email is listed, and I mean, the exciting thing about him is it is an open challenge to a lot of scientists, philosophers, and the average person. So that's a lot of. I mean, that's definitely what attracted me to it more than most.
So yeah, I watched a lot of his seminars on YouTube and stuff that he does, and he refers to World of Warcraft a bunch, actually. And actually, a couple times he stumbles over it because he can't remember what it is. So obviously, you can tell.
Right. Yeah, that's my favorite EverQuest or World of Warcraft or The Sims. I love it when he he has such a passing knowledge of video games, and yet his whole theory is
so much more easily grasped by those of us who are into computer games, simulation video games. It's kind of the perfect metaphor for digital physics with video game.
Yeah.
So needless to say, people that don't do video games a lot are just kind of confused and look at him as a crazy man half the time.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, luckily, video games is the #1 media industry on the planet, as far as I'm aware. I think it's eclipsed movies and music.
If not, it will soon.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of zombie stuff going out recently, so yeah, everyone's into zombies now.
Hey, for the sake of our listeners that might not know exactly what it's all about, in a nutshell, and in layman's term, or as simply as you can, tell everyone exactly the whole aspect of My Big Toe and also Life as a Video Game documentary. The whole idea behind it.
He means for somebody like me who's old and doesn't get all of this.
Don't throw in words over 6 syllables.
No problem. One of the running ideas in science has been, what is the universe made out of? And beginning with Democritus, it was atoms. And eventually those atoms, you had a form of physics called Newtonian, in which it was billiard balls, atoms and billiard balls, right, moving around. And then later in the late 18th century, early 19th century, they discovered that there was particles and waves. So there was billiard balls, but there was also waves. And that opened up the field of quantum mechanics. Now, if you push it one more step further, a lot of scientists don't think that the world is made of atoms. They think the world is made of information. I happen to have one of the books right here called Programming the Universe. I don't know if it's going to be reversed on the feed, but this is by Seth Lloyd, and we show it in the video because that's just one of many books where people are coming out saying, yes, reality is fundamentally not atoms, but information, which gets into a somewhat of an abstract idea. Tom, who was a NASA physicist and a Department of Defense researcher, also happened to have some kind of kinky experiences with a guy named Bob Monroe, who wrote a series of books about out-of-body experience. The most popular is called
Journeys Out of the Body, Bob Monroe.
Journeys Out of the Body. There's the Monroe Institute, and Tom was one of the physicists who helped them set up their laboratories.
You might have heard of remote viewing. That's kind of a popular idea. It was in the movie Suspect Zero.
Suspect Zero, yeah.
Yeah, and Bob Monroe is a person who was having remote viewing out-of-body experiences without trying to. They were befalling him like a plague. He didn't want them to happen. They were freaking him out. He thought he was going totally crazy.
Yeah.
So he wound up hooking up with Tom. Tom, who was a physicist, young physicist in the professional world. He had just graduated, and he helped him build. Tom helped Bob build his lab to test whether or not these experiences were legitimate or not, and they came up with a bunch of positive results. I mean, as everyone knows, remote viewing is a pretty kind of a popular fringe thing right now. It's in movies and stuff like that. A lot of people know it exists and so forth.
Yeah, you could just think of it as clairvoyance in the old school. But anyway, they did experiments with this stuff over and over again, had plenty of success, made product, turned the laboratory eventually became an institute that's still very active today. And so what happened was Tom, who's this professional physicist, ends up having this kind of, these kinky experiences in the realm of, that you would expect mystics and yogis to have, including kind of strange psychic phenomena. All of this without the use of any, drugs. Drugs, but because that would make all the sense in the world if it went that way.
Yeah, but so he wound up having to ask himself, what is the physics behind this? If this is a real phenomenon, things like remote viewing. If reality is information, these pieces are starting to come together. He saw an opportunity to make a new theory, a new Einstein's crack at a grand unified theory of everything. Only his includes things like consciousness, subjective experience, and even kinky things like remote viewing.
Yeah, he addresses free will and subjectivity. And so probably the best way to sum up his book is that he's part of this trend in science where they say reality is information. But unlike a fella here from IBM, I had his page, but I don't have it anymore. It's in this book. It's in the beginning in the introduction. They think that information is physical. In other words, that all the atoms and smaller parts, they're still physical. Tom is different. Tom says that information is not physical. In other words, consciousness, or your mind, is not a physical phenomenon at all. In fact, he's pretty hardcore with his theory. He even thinks that, the classic idea that if a tree falls in the woods, is there anyone there to hear it? Well, he says if it's not being observed, then there is no tree and there is no woods and nothing is falling. That the universe literally doesn't render until your player gets there.
It's exactly like World of Warcraft. If a tree falls in the World of Warcraft woods and no one's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound. Well, no, it's not even being rendered because no one's in that particular forest.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's
that book that
So
you guys were just showing, Programming the Universe. I read that in philosophy, and
Oh, yeah.
when we covered that, and we covered several other philosophy sites when I was in college, just a few years back. And my question was, because we all had to pretty much decide to ask a question philosophical to the whole class. My question was, what if everything we know is wrong? I mean, like, what if everything is wrong, completely wrong? The way we use speech, everything, understanding science has come up with is wrong, everything. And teacher's like, you can't ask that. I'm like, why? Everything's being proven wrong anyways. Every 10 years or so, something that science thought was actually the truth and everything is being proven wrong. So if we know absolutely nothing, and like you guys are talking about, this is programming, it's got information is everywhere. Well, what if he's right and we are just a sim or anything like that?
Yeah.
It's everything. If that becomes true, then everything we've known in the past is completely wrong.
And that's kind of why we wanted to make the film, because it is exciting in that way. Like, all of our ideologies and philosophies and religions and political bents kind of undergo a bit of a transformation if they're recontextualized. Like that's just a job in The Sims, if you look at it like that, everything you're interested in, or even the world you're participating in, takes on a drastically different meaning if this is all the result of a computational simulation. So that's exactly why we wanted to make it, because it's like it's big, it's powerful, it's nasty like that. Yeah. I always like paradigm shifting ideas and assaults. Like, the book is an assault, the theory is an assault. So that's always been a turn on for me.
But going back real quick, just to kind of finally put a cap on the end of your question about how to explain Tom's theory, it's a lot of people, digital physics, a lot of scientists say reality is information. That's not like the kinkiest idea there is out there. That's fairly mainstream. A lot of reputable people are arguing that. But as Elliot said, they argue that the information is physical. Inherently, it's physical, like an atom, like a rock-hard thing.
Yeah.
What quantum mechanics tells us, and what Tom's implying, is that the information has to be processed, that consciousness is entangled in the process.
Yeah.
But Tom takes it a step further and says that consciousness is the fundamental reality. Einstein had a statement similar to that.
Yeah.
He means this. Tom seems to mean it almost a little more literally.
Yeah. You could consider Max Planck, who said the mind is the matrix of all matter, or Terence McKenna, who said that mind is necessary for the universe to undergo the formality of existing. You could think of Jiddu Krishnamurti, who said the observer is the observed. The whole idea is that, and this is the big tension in science right now, is that we want an objective universe, but ever since we had problems like the uncertainty principle the observer effect, which means that the whole world is a wave until you look at it and then it becomes a particle, which is exactly like the idea of rendering. Like the game doesn't render until your player gets there. We've all assumed since the Enlightenment, or maybe prior to that a little bit, that reality is objective, that it's material, that there's a world outside my experience. But what Tom is suggesting is that the reality is actually subjective, and that the computer that processes this reality is your own consciousness. It's kind of like your little Wi-Fi antenna connecting to a cosmic internet. I know that's a lot of stuff right there, I suppose, but I guess the shortest way to say it would be that,
Bring on the question.
yeah, that you are the computer, and that you're getting a data stream, and that data stream is your life, and that you can interact with it with your intent. So yeah, that's probably a good introduction. The best thing to do would be to check out Tom's channel on Tom Campbell's channel on YouTube. It's really good, a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And-
So,
Oh,
In
well, we
other
all
words-
started talking.
Everyone, speak at once.
in other
Right.
words, he's saying that my brain isn't the computer, my whole brain is.
Yeah, you don't. According to Tom, you don't even have a brain.
No.
like it's not there until it's rendered.
I don't think I like him anymore.
Yeah, so like computer cycles, like the computer consciousness doesn't create anything unless it has to. So even something like your brain, like the idea of a brain in the vat, which I think is Descartes' evil genius. I think that's Descartes. You don't even have a brain. What you have is consciousness and information, and that's it. And it seems physical because the point of the program is to appear physical, which is a lot like Buddhist and Gnostic texts, actually.
Is that I remember what you're talking about, the body being like a computer program or whatever. There's actually something I read about and I studied a little bit called the Akashic Dictionary.
Sure.
That's if you have an idea and you forget it or whatever, it gets stored in this wherever it gets stored, and you don't remember it, but someone else anywhere in the world can remember your idea. And that's when you see something on TV and you're like, I thought of that years ago. And that's because you did. Just someone else just got into your dictionary and pulled it out and was like, oh, I'm going to make this happen. So
Tom makes mention of the fact that generally when a scientific breakthrough happens, the experiment is duplicated somewhere completely unrelated without them getting that. And usually, whenever a breakthrough happens, the experiment is duplicated and confirmed somewhere else,
like
without having that information. It just becomes like accessible to the whole.
Like calculus
species.
and the steam engine were discovered or thought about at the same time, and I think so was evolution, actually. So what's implied by that is that there's a kind of, Tom calls it a reality wide web that we're all connected to all the time. I call it the cosmic Google.
Or what was the phrase from the 60s, group consciousness?
Yeah, like, or you could think of Jung's collective unconscious.
Collective unconscious.
All sort of similar ideas that there's this sort of mental internet that we're all interfacing with, and that we're actually, that's our real origin, and that everything else is sort of an illusion. But it's a necessary illusion, because he goes into this idea that the life we're experiencing in physical reality is here specifically to evolve, or in other words, like level up your particular unit of consciousness.
and there's something that I'd like to bring up. It's used in a lot of anime nowadays, or actually I think two, so that's not really a lot. But the idea that if so many people think that something is real, even though it's not, if they believe it's real, then through thought process it becomes real. Which I think one of those was the Melancholy of Hiraizu Suzumiya, something like that. Japanese names. And I can't exactly remember the other one because it was the Japanese title too, just way out there. And they basically had the same idea that they put out all this subliminal messaging, which our minds, biologically speaking, not metaphorically speaking, our minds can process stuff that even our eyes don't catch. So, or maybe someone's programming that into us. We never know that. But so we can all think the same thing. Like, what if we wake up tomorrow and then something's different, but everybody knows it's there, but they think it's always been there? It's kind of a confusing way to put it, but it's kind of how it is.
Yeah. And
So basically, dinosaurs could be real tomorrow, but if we thought they always were, then it happened.
Well, the idea is that the system isn't that flexible, that there's a rule set and a kind of continuity, but it's a fuzzy continuity. What you're describing sounds similar to the idea of like the Buddhist tulpa, which is a thought form. Like they'd all meditate on this thought form and supposedly it'd manifest. But I mean, just think of a nation, like a nation of the world. A nation of the world is just a notion that's been like mandated over and over and reinforced over and over again to the point where it becomes like a hyper real. It becomes its own meta space and it has its own consciousness in a way.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up hyperrealism because that's kind of like when you're paranoid and you see something that's not really there, but your mind is completely believable that it's there, like the monster under your bed or the one in your closet. And then you start seeing the shadows and you start seeing everything. Like I've always believed in the power of the mind. Like it's a crazy thing, and I normally don't really take in any other like I don't believe in all this other stuff, but then finally listening to your guys talk and you know what you're talking about, and then I'm like, well, because I've been a major person in the paranormal. I love the paranormal, the fact that they're there. Maybe now I'm thinking maybe Bigfoot exists because somebody got paranoid, it spread around, and now he's just there. It could totally happen.
Yeah. Tom does suggest that what you like, that you're in that the way consciousness works is that consciousness interfaces with reality through your intent. In other words, like this right here. How is this happening? I'm intending this to happen. It's just this level of interface. But if you're feeling like you'd like to experiment with this kind of thing, you can attempt intending for certain outcomes, jobs. In other words, you just bend the probability. Like you can see that in random number generator experiments. A lot of the paranormal research that's been gone on for like the last 100 years has to do with mostly receiving information and influencing machines. And one of them is the use of, a very common one is the use of random number generators. A very interesting thing happened with them on 9/11. A very famous Pear Labs in Princeton. There was this huge spike on the random number generator when 9/11 happened. So it's got this. That's like the most dynamic example, but. That kind of thing where you focus and sort of bend probability.
Yeah, they have a person sit down in front of a random number generator, and it's producing even and odd numbers at random, but you ask the person to try and bias it with their intent, just with their willpower, like the Force,
Yeah, straight up.
And so what they found is that there is enough evidence to prove that if you sit a human being in front of a random number generator and tell them to have a bias towards twos, then more twos will come up than when they're not around, and it's a statistical percentage to prove that it is a likely effect.
Yeah, over chance.
So how is that happening? Maybe there's a telepathic field that's like radiation, we can't see it or whatever. Like that's what physical scientists would say. But,
yeah. Physical scientists would say it's like wavelengths coming from your brain.
But if reality is just information waiting to be rendered, then then it's a much easier answer there. It's like, well, it's telepathy. The whole universe is informational. It's not a physical telepathic beam going to retrieve information. It's just all ethereal. It's all informational.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like a lot, or I think it's already been used in a movie, and then TV shows are using it now. One TV show, Numbers, where they have this computer that can calculate who is the next target of a specific attack. Which I think that's a pretty neat idea concept. I think Lady Rage is trying to say something.
I don't know if anybody's paying attention to chat besides just tapping back and forth. Thank you, Dr. Stone, for doing that. But there's a person in chat that says that he met Tom Campbell.
Did they identify themselves? I might know them.
It's not by real name, no.
Oh.
It's Monteshore. He says he's an awesome guy. Been active on his forums for a couple of years and went to meet up with him in Boston last year.
Cool. I didn't get to go to that one, but yeah. The forum is really cool because it sort of feels like you're in a group that's in on being on the Matrix, like being in the Matrix, but it's like a message board that's of all these people who are hip to that idea and are all kind of like sharing concepts around this, around Tom's theory. Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Now, does anyone else have any questions before I steal the show?
Dr. Stone, Coco.
Oh no, I'm just you guys are doing fine. In fact, you answered already a few of the questions I already had on my list, so I'm just going here scratching things off as we go along. But one of the things I've always wanted to that I just wanted to throw out, just from my own 2 cents, my own perspectives, is that there have been many times in my life that I felt that someone else was playing me, and they were drunk, and I've always and with what Tom
It might be a personal problem. I don't know if we can.
yeah. Oh no, that can't be it. But from what you guys are bringing out, and what Tom's work, it does answer a lot of questions that I've had before. But no, you guys are doing fine. And right now, I don't have any questions at this time. But I will have a few before we're finished.
Good.
Good. I want to hear from the doctor, man.
Coco.
Yeah, I have a question. This is amazing. First of all, I just want to definitely say that. But is there any stories y'all can share about pushback on this project? I can't imagine doing something like this and not getting some kind of hate mail or something going on.
Yeah, we got this awesome hate on disinfo.com. We were called hipsters that have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, that was awesome. It was so awesome.
Someone argued quite simply the universe is analog, not digital.
Yeah,
and of course, at least he wanted to make an argument. The other guy just said one person said life's not a video game, it's a prison camp. And it will continue to be a prison camp as long as people are convinced it's a video game. Which I was like, oh, okay, you can disagree with us, but he's kind of saying that we're perpetuating the prison camp. That's a little harsh for a movie we haven't even made yet. But no, I like the hate mail.
Yeah, we have some. Yeah, go to Disinfo. That's probably got our most awesome hate mail.
So, well, I occasionally get a little hate mail from one of my personal friends who just doesn't necessarily grok the idea. I explain to them the idea of the movie, and they're like, "But stuff is stuff."
Yeah, so
things are solid.
There's surprisingly not a lot of hate. There's a lot of encouragement, but the people who do hate, hate.
Yeah,
and they hate, and it's really.
You gotta be willing.
Feels good.
Yeah,
you must be doing something right.
Yeah, right. People getting upset. You must be touching something sensitive.
Yeah, I was just going to say that when you get hate mail, you're on the right track.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question for you guys. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Please go on Disinfo and take a look at it. Add some.
Yeah,
That's like our hate mailbox right now. Give us some fresh hate.
With his theory about, your brain's not a computer until you activate it or whatever, would he go with the fact that if people who have part of their brains that don't work on the right side, that the left-hand side could interact and take over that?
Well, sure. The idea is that there's sort of this field of consciousness. You can think of it as an internet if you want to. But that internet is going to be constrained by the platform which interfaces with it. In other words, the internet you experience on an iPhone or on one of these little clamshell phones that I still have, or a laptop or a quantum computer. It's all the same internet, but the constraints of that system are entirely different.
Like the internet they had on Dreamcast. That was incredibly constrained.
Wow.
That was incredibly constrained for you.
So if you suffer damage to a part of your body or part of your brain, then yeah, your bandwidth, you could almost think of Claude Shannon and his kind of idea of how does a communication system work. Same kind of thing. Like if your bandwidth, if your constraints are compromised, then yeah, your data stream will be compromised as well, and that might be control over your left hand, or you might have a stroke and lose all of one side of your body.
So basically what you're saying, in my layman's terms, if you grab a hammer and smash your router, then you have a little bit slower internet after that.
Oh yeah, you might have
just
no
a little.
internet after that. If you hit hard enough.
Just hope you don't have to call tech support.
Oh yeah, insurance is crazy.
My tech support, there's a voice in my head, but it speaks Spanish, so I have no clue what it's saying.
Oh, no, isn't that the worst?
The Philip K. Dick's was Latin for a while on LSD. Spoke perfect Latin after a dose of LSD. He also said that he
Oh, that's
thinks
like
the
an
world is a
exorcism.
computer.